Morning, y'all. This morning we're going to replace the aluminum spacer that's behind the steering box in the XJ with this steel one that we got from Rusty's Off-Road Products. Now I already pulled the bolts. You can see the bolts up in here where the bolts are for it. They go through the outside of the fender. You've got one here, and then one, see if you can see that, right up there. It's kind of a pain to get to. You need to use a swivel or maybe a ratchet. I used a swivel on the impact. So those go through a tube inside the frame, and they come out on the back side, and then in between they thread into the gearbox. And in between the frame and the gearbox sits this spacer. This is the factory one that I pulled out, and it's aluminum. And they're pretty bad about breaking and causing problems. And sometimes you won't realize you've got problems until it's too late and it's already cracked the frame. Luckily, this one hasn't cracked yet or caused any problems, but it's definitely bowed. So it's probably good to replace it. So you pull that out from in between there, and then this one goes back up in between there. Get up in here where we can see what I'm talking about. Grab the light. So once you've got those bolts out, you can see right up in there where those bolts come through. And basically all this plate does is sit in that spot in between the gearbox and the frame and spaces it out the right distance. So what we're going to do, we'll grab the spacer here and slip it up in there, and it'll go just like that with the flat side towards the frame. And let me set you back over here for a second. Aim this where y'all can see something other than the back of the light there. And so that up in there is where we're working. The hardest part about this, now if you live up north, a lot of times those bolts will rust up and they'll seize inside of the bracket. All right, when you're getting ready to put this steering gearbox back on with the plate, so a couple of things you'll want to do. If you had to buy new bolts, and if you need new bolts, they're 7/16, they're standard 7/16 bolts. Get the grade 8 ones, the good ones. I reused mine because they're still in good shape. Luckily, I live where there's not snow, so we don't have a salt problem. But if yours broke or seized up in the aluminum and broke and you had to get the pieces out, you get you some new bolts, but get them a little bit long. And here's why. These bolts, they look like this, and at the end they're threaded, and then they have a teat that sticks out from the threads. And what that does is when you're trying to get all this line back up under the truck and get the bolts started, that really helps you get those bolts in the holes. If you have a standard bolt without that teat on there, it'll work, but you're gonna have a lot harder time getting it threaded back into the hole. And the other thing is, definitely torque them to spec. My book says 65 foot-pounds, and use blue Loctite on them, which I did. You'll see, but I already had it applied, so you won't see it in the video, but it's already on the bolts. I put it on there. Definitely use Loctite and torque it to specs, and you'll be good to go. So now let's get to putting everything back together. Sometimes those bolts will seize up in that aluminum bracket and it'll come all apart, the bolts will break. So if you're gonna do this and you live in a place where rust is a real problem, say up north where they put salt on the roads, then you might want to have you some new bolts standing by when you do this. Let's see here. Get this hole lined up. And that's that. Torque down, ready to go. It's not a very glamorous part. Doesn't make your rig look any better, but it will keep the sorry piece of aluminum from cracking and then causing your frame to crack where your steering box mounts up. I got that piece from Rusty's Off-Road Products. They're not a sponsor, I just like them. They're good prices. But you can also get that part pretty much every place that sells XJ parts. And that's it. Simple, easy. The hardest part for me, and I did this before I turned the camera on, was I had to clearance my bumper bracket a little bit because it was right up against the flat on one of those bolts. So that's it. Installing the replacement steel spacer for the steering gearbox on the XJ. Hopefully this video will help y'all out, show you what to do, give you an idea. Give us a like, subscribe, or just watch. We appreciate it. Y'all have a good one.